You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
I know not everyone listens to the show at exactly the day it debuts, but I appreciate you tuning into the show whatever day you're listening, and I look forward to being able to answer our community's questions one by one in the order they've come in. And this is really my time. It's a very quiet time in my office when I'm able to sit back, open up the massive document that my team has for me that really dates back 4 years ago now, and answering thousands and thousands and thousands of our community's questions. And this doesn't even include all of the daily questions being answered over at cabralsupportgroup.com. So when people ask me, what's the most fun part of your work? I always go back to, of course, I love being a health detective and I love reading labs. But the truth is, I love being able to be a trusted source and a central point for unbiased information on what you might be missing, on what that next step is that you should be taking in order to transform your health and from there transform your life. And I love being able to do that for people, not because I think that, we have any special, magic or special sauce or anything like that, but simply we are an extremely dedicated group of individuals, of integrative health practitioners that are looking to give back in some way based on all the trials and tribulations and issues that each one of us have had to deal with in our own life. And most people on my team, including our own medical director, went through all of their own health-based challenges. And now we're looking to say, listen, if we can even save you a couple months of suffering, that would be amazing. And so that's what we look to do. And for many people, it'd be many years that we're able to really reverse that dis-ease process in the body and enable people to find out what's been holding them back all along. So that's what the Cabral HouseCalls are all about. That's what the daily Q&A over at cabralsupportgroup.com, which is our Facebook group, is all about. And so hopefully you've been really engaging with the community, offering your advice as well inside of that private Facebook group. So now what I'd like to do is dive right into today's first question. If you're new to the show, each and every weekend, we answer all questions that come in at stephencabral.com/askcabral. These started, today's on 12/6, so December 6th, this question's from. So we're about 8 weeks, 9 weeks behind. We've caught up to as close as 6 weeks, and now we're kind of on that, pushing back towards that back end. We've been as far as 12 weeks. Simply my ability to answer 5 to 10 questions each Saturday and 5 to 10 questions each Sunday is how quickly we move on the questions. So, do feel free to write in, but also use cabralsupportgroup.com as a really good sounding board there as well. All right. So this question's coming in from Nancy. And it's, hello, Dr. Ball. I've been learning so much from your podcast and book, and I have a question about vegetable oils. In my nutrition class at college, my teacher explained how polyunsaturated vegetable oils, like canola oil, have been processed and are often already oxidized to form damaging free radicals, or at the very least, would form them when heated during cooking. We joked that perhaps a little bottle of canola oil is like a little bottle of free radicals. However, a lot of heart health research studies say that using polyunsaturated vegetable oils like canola oil reduce heart disease. When I learned about omega-3s, I understood that they are beneficial and anti-inflammatory, and perhaps canola oil originally had omega-3 in it, but it is by its chemical nature of many double bonds. Doesn't that mean that the processing and heating would create free radicals? So how can Heart Association say it's healthy? They even sponsor canola oil on the bottle. Can you help clarify, shouldn't everyone avoid canola oil and similar vegetable oils? Thank you for sharing your incredible wisdom with the world. Nancy, thank you for writing in, and I appreciate the kind words. I truly do. So you're absolutely right that canola oil, well, let's look at it two ways. So there's canola oil, and then there's also the fact that over 90% of all canola oil is genetically modified. So first of all, we have a genetically modified food, by the way, is not a food anymore. It looks like a food, but it's called a genetically modified organism because it's not natural. It's not an actual natural food anymore. They use viruses or heavy metals or other things in order to mutate that food in a way to allow it to be exposed to greater amounts of pesticide, etc. It could be in order to do all sorts of things to the food itself. But that wasn't the question. The question is, it's a polyunsaturated fat. That's correct. Polyunsaturated fats are not bad for you unless overdone or unless heated, exposed to light, or exposed to oxygen, right? So this is the problem. Well, first of all, canola oil is not a health-based food. There's no doubt about it. But, I mean, keep in mind, look at soy, look at canola, look at all these foods that are genetically modified, and I mean, they have big marketing dollars behind them from big corporations. So not a good thing. But again, just like you said, omega-3s, fish oils, or just flax oil if you want to go for a vegan-based variety, are polyunsaturated as well. So when we look at these polyunsaturated fats, they're not bad. Ayurveda taught us they're not bad. I mean, Ayurveda, we're using sesame oil, we're using all safflower oil. The problem is, in Ayurveda, they cook things at an extremely low temperature in ceramic-based pots and things of that nature that would never heat up or oxidize too much these fats. And they also put things in them so they wouldn't oxidize again. Going back to my family roots, I'm about a dozen different nationalities. I really am. Like pick a nationality, I'm basically that. But, going back to my roots, my last name is Portuguese, and, the other main part we associate with is Italian, is from Italy. And that's because a lot of our cultures and things like that, go there. And my grandmother, who is very much the kind of like center of the household, she cooked with olive oil and the sauces and all these things. But again, at a very low temperature, and they knew, but they added garlic and other antioxidants so that the oils and these fats would not oxidize. So omega-3s, I actually just gave this 15-minute chat today to my personal trainers, and I talked about the fact that omega-3s should be triglyceride-bound, cold processed, kept in a dark bottle, and not one of these enormous bottles of any type of oil that you see at like Costco or BJ's, because every time you open it, it's being exposed to oxygen, and you want to keep it, again, closed away. So it's not necessarily the fact that it's a polyunsaturated fat right away that makes it bad. What's bad is its exposure to air, oxygen, heat, or light, all of which break down, just as you alluded to, those polyunsaturated, poly meaning many, weak bonds, then creating the oxidative damage in the body. So Nancy, I mean, you're right. So I'm basically just saying you're right. All right. Wanda's up next. Hello. I'm about to start my first 7-day detox, and I was wondering if it would be okay to include 1 scoop of the fruit and vegetable powder with each drink. I did not want to lose any weight during the week and thought it would be a good idea. So you can absolutely add the daily fruit and vegetable blend, no doubt about it. I mean, if you're on a specific protocol with your practitioner, you can still use those things if you'd like. There's no issue with that. I still take my supplements that I need to and want to during my 7-day detox, and I do 4 a year every quarter. So no problem at all. However, if you're not looking to lose any weight, it says right in the guide after the first 2 days, add back in some of those sweet potatoes at lunch and dinner, or yams or yucca. And also with your shakes, you could actually do some berries. So that's the way to do it, Wanda. Nothing wrong with losing a little bit of weight those first couple days, and you can just gain it back if you choose to by adding in more of the starches and fruit. No problem at all. That's on our Detox FAQ page, and you can also ask anytime at cabralsupportgroup.com. Reem is up next. Dear Dr. Cabral, I hope you're doing well. I've been having a hard time passing out stool and suffering from bloating for more than a year now. I stopped getting the urge of wanting to pass out stool, and when I decide to go, I strain a lot. It's been a year since the stool came out as bulk. Currently, when I strain, it comes out as small, soft blobs. Because of straining, I get a minor stomach hernia and hemorrhoid. I did endoscopy, colonoscopy, stool test, and blood test. All turned out to be fine. I told the doctor I'm on a low-carb diet. He suspected that I'm not having enough fiber, so they gave me some natural fiber to eat, and it does improve passing out stool a little. So I'm so tired of all this. I feel down. I noticed that I started to be less social. I want to know your opinion on my case, and if there are any further tests that can be done, for example, food sensitivity test or any other test. Reem, I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, digestive-based issues are probably half of our practice. So I get it. I would run the organic acids test. Absolutely. If you've already run the parasite and stool test, no problem. It sounds like you're either dehydrated or you don't have enough bulk in your stool. What happens is when it comes out as pebbles, I did a whole podcast on what your poop should look like. So do feel free to tune into that show. Poop, stool, bowel movement, whatever you'd like to call it. So, here's the thing. If you're on a low carb diet, that very well could be one of the culprits. I would challenge you to actually include a smoothie in your diet in the morning to get more hydration. I would challenge you to get more veggies, at least for bulk fiber at lunch. Same at dinner. Unless you're on a low carb diet for a specific reason, I'd love you to get in some yams or yucca at lunch as well. I would love you to be using psyllium husk at night with dinner or after dinner. I'd love you to be using the natural calm or the magnesium citrate before bed. And then I'd love you to be using the alkalizing vitamin C upon waking. I'd start there. And if you're still having issues, again, run that organic acids test, also called the Candida metabolic and vitamins test. Then we'll help to a greater degree. But that does it for most people. We also have a great product called Advanced Fiber Support. You can add that in too. So hopefully that's helping. And there we go. Katie's up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. I have a question about asthma. I'm 24 years old, have had allergy-induced asthma for nearly 8 years. I've been working on my gut for about 2 years, done with the CBO and the CBO finisher, taking the food sensitivity test, stool test, oat. Now I'm working on GI balance for 2 months per my practitioner. I also tested HTMA, and I'm addressing those imbalances with supplements. Sent in my thyroid adrenal hormone this December. My allergy symptoms like sore throat, sneezing, etc. have gotten dramatically better, but the asthma persists, as does a recurring eczema patch, and I know they're related. I do acupuncture, nasal drains, take all my supplements. I still feel stuck. Been on Zyrtec singular for 8 years. Trying to go up the Zyrtec recently while my allergies were fine. Had to go back because of trouble breathing. Just uncomfortable more than anything. My immediate question is, where's the next place to look? What could be the cause given what all I've already done? Second, I'd love to see you do 1 or 2 episodes diving deep on asthma. Thank you as always, Katie. Yeah, it's a good topic for sure. And very well may do allergies and asthma connected. If you look into my podcast way back on homotoxicology, then you'll start to see how asthma and allergies can be related, oftentimes related to lower levels of calcium or stuck in more of what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, also related to egregious higher levels of inflammatory cytokines or lower levels of cortisol. So a lot of what I see a lot of my practice is that early childhood infection, virus, gut-based issues, antibiotics weaken the body. Body ends up with allergies or asthma. That's what happened to me. So that's why, again, I know a lot of these things simply because hard living growing up as a kid. And so that's what we've had to do, really work on those things. Intestinal permeability is a big one. So just making sure that intestinal permeability is cleaned up. And the hair tissue mineral analysis, I just wonder, do you have an inverted calcium to magnesium? Because you could very well need more calcium. Licorice root can be incredibly beneficial. Reishi mushroom, I talked about that last Friday, can be beneficial in balancing some of these inflammatory-based responses. A good probiotic, for sure, can be helpful. You're doing the food sensitivity, which is great. Eczema is typically related to a food sensitivity, typically related to dairy, egg, or gluten. So hopefully you've eliminated those. I'm giving you a lot of things to look into. So that's where I would start. And again, if you're getting benefit from taking Zyrtec or Singulair, this could be a weakened adrenal response because those things are pushing the HPA axis. So I'd rather you have to start to use things like the Mulane Lung Complex by Planetary Herbals to give your lungs a little boost, which contains some long pepper, contains some cassia, contains mullein, it contains licorice root extract, ginger rhizome, Mulane Lung Complex, not an Equilibrium nutrition product, made by Planetary Herbals. So again, work with your practitioner. I can't diagnose, I can't treat, I can't cure disease, especially not over a podcast, but I can give you a place to get started. So hopefully that was helpful. James is up next. Hey, mentor, I have a question regarding breath. I feel like throughout the day, I do not breathe properly. I oftentimes unconsciously hold my breath, and when I do breathe, I do not breathe into my diaphragm. For a long time, I've had real issues to get a full breath, and when I breathe, it feels like my breath is getting stuck in my throat, top of my chest. I feel like something's blocking it. When I meditate, I feel the same way. I wonder if you have any idea on why I may feel some blocking there, possibly some emotional trauma, maybe physical tightening, or chest due to some inflammation. I'm pretty puzzled. Any thoughts on this would be great. Thank you, James. James, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know it always seems like I've experienced a lot of these things, but I've experienced a lot of these things. And, it's very strange. I go back, and you know that I love to read. And one of the reasons why I love to read is that when I read books, I realize, hey, I'm not alone. And so I would read a lot of practitioners. I don't know. I wish I could. I don't. Sometimes I just draw a blank on all these authors' names. But I believe it was it's Dr. Bach, of course, B-A-C-H. But I believe it's Dr. Edward Bach, way back in the early 1900s, was using things like Bach flower remedies. I've used them way back in my practice. I don't use them too much anymore, simply because I've explained this before, and what I do in my practice, I have to replicate over and over and over. Oftentimes people tell me, this is my last stop. I've seen a million other people, and I need to make sure that this works. And so, listen, I get it. And so I just used replicable programs that I know are going to work. So, James, but here's the thing. I dealt with this myself when I first started meditation-based practice, and the problem is tension. And you might say, well, obviously that makes sense. Here's what that means, though. So, when the sympathetic nervous system is overly engaged, it actually locks up your body's ability to relax the diaphragm, to relax a lot of the muscles in your body because you're tense. Like you're literally getting ready for a survival-based situation, fight or flight. Now, I know you're just sitting there at your desk, but you're holding a lot of tension. Now, the ironic thing is this. The best way to get out of that is by breathing. So it's this double-edged sword, right? It's like, well, I need to breathe lower and more relaxed. I need to breathe in the lower lobes of the lungs, the last third of the lungs. I need to exhale all of that carbon dioxide. So how do I go about doing this, right? Because that's the way. Well, I reviewed a book not too long ago that I'd like to share with you today called The Oxygen Advantage. And the same author wrote another book, a very small little manual for, again, this, Katie, hopefully you're still listening, also helps with asthma as well. And this is by Patrick McKeown. I apologize. McKeown, I believe. And it's called Close Your Mouth. So the Oxygen Advantage, and then also Close Your Mouth. So those two books will help you with your practice. Inside of my own desk, I keep something called mouth taping or mouth tape. And you can actually tape your mouth just while you're at your desk by yourself. And it will get you to go back to your breath, breathe through your nose, how humans were meant to breathe. And I have an awful deviated septum. I've often said to myself, listen, I would never go to the hospital again unless I was dying. I would never do surgery unless I was dying. But I've given real thought, to opening up my nasal passages. I don't have the smallest nose in the world, and I have very small openings at the top. So much so that when I was doing one of my internships in India, and I was doing Jata or Jati Neti, I could not get and this is going to sound pretty gross for most people, but I could not get the tube through both sides of my nose. It's basically like flossing your nasal passages. I know how gross that sounds. I couldn't do it. The passage is so small on the right side of my nose. Now, here's the good thing. After cleaning up my diet, reducing my inflammation, I can actually breathe through both sides of my nostrils. Like, amazing, right? So I can do that, but it is not with ease. So for me, I don't want to, but I've given thought to it at least, that if I were, because people get such great results with it, that I want to expand my nasal passages. So anyway, I'm not saying that you should do that, but what I'm saying is I did an interview with Dr. Belisa as well, who's has a book called Breathe, I believe. So she's got great videos that can teach you. She did a podcast with me. But what we need to do is get into a state of relaxation, breathing through the nasal passages, relaxing the muscles of the jaw, relaxing the muscles of the chest, letting the shoulders fall. You can even try lying on your back first and then doing some belly breathing, watching a light book rise and fall. So James, all of that will help you, no doubt about it. Okay, thanks for writing in. James, this might be you as well, but we have another question from James. Hi, Doc. My question is about these processed food products I see sold in the supermarket. Do they hold any real benefit, or are most of the vitamins and minerals lost in the processing? I guess there must be many factors that play a role that each of the companies make, But for example, coconut water, dark chocolate, dried fruit, can these be good for me? When I'm drinking a carton coconut water, am I really getting the electrolytes that would be present in the natural form? Thank you, Dr. James. Oh, I see what you're saying. So processed foods could be looked at as really negative, meaning like processed food, we typically talk about it as flour and breads and pastas. We want to stay away from those for the most part. I mean, they're delicious, don't get me wrong, but once a week as a flex meal, enjoy your favorite foods. Good. Okay. But if we're talking about processed food as in like coconut water, well, coconut water still retains its natural electrolytes. Now, it's naturally high in potassium. If you drink maple water, it's naturally high in manganese. So you just have to know the electrolyte that you're getting because it's not naturally high in magnesium or calcium. It's naturally high in potassium. Dark chocolate, okay, where you're going to get magnesium, you're going to get copper, as we talked about last week. You're going to get theobromine. You're going to get a lot of other great things in it too. Dried fruit. So dried fruit contains the essence, the vitamins, minerals in the fruit, but much easier to consume, so it could be a little bit higher of a glycemic response. So James, I would actually say there's benefit to what we're calling healthy processed foods, but what happens is when you process these foods, you start to remove some, not all, of the antioxidants, right? Because a lot of that is in the outer core, the outer shell, and you start to lose the enzymes. So that's what we miss from a living food, right? Versus a more processed food. But that's not to say that you can't get benefit from a coconut water. Like if you have high blood pressure and you were to drink a coconut water, you could get massive benefit from that because it's higher potassium naturally. Okay, so there's a time and place for everything. I actually don't recommend coconut water to a lot of people because there's excess sugar in it. So I just say, listen, you don't need it. But there's a time and place, and I could recommend it. Some people love eating dessert. Well, dark chocolate could make a much better choice than ice cream at night. So, James, hard for me to answer that, just straight away, because it's not an all for one. But if we're not talking about processed flour and grains, then the foods that you're alluding to could actually still have some benefit to them. For example, you could technically say a green juice is processed, right? Because you're juicing it, you're processing the fruit to get the vitamins, minerals, get rid of the fiber, and put that in your juice. So there's benefits to that for sure. So again, hard to say. There's always a little bit of that gray area. It's a great question, and I don't think I've answered it before. So thank you, James. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. These shows fly by, at least for me. But I'll be back tomorrow with answering another 5 to 10 questions of our community's questions, picking up here on 12/9 and 12/10. Thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of your weekend, and I'll talk with you soon. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Steven Cabral. And that's Steven with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.